CEO of Godfather's Pizza and radio talk show host. Tim Pawlenty of Minnesota, who served 2 full terms as that state's governor. Rick Santorum, former U.S. representative and 2-term senator from Pennsylvania. And Gary Johnson, businessman and former 2-term governor of New Mexico. Here's the format for our debate tonight. Each candidate will be asked a series of questions on foreign and domestic issues. Answers are limited to 1 minute each. If we decide rebuttal time is needed, that will be 30 seconds. We have green, yellow, and red lights to help the candidates keep track of their time. And if an answer runs long, candidates and everyone else will hear this sound. There it is. We ask our large and enthusiastic audience to please limit applause during the question and answer portion of the debate so we can devote as much time as possible to the candidates. Now let's get started. Governor Pawlenty, President Obama was at Ground Zero today. He received the praise of city leaders there as well as 9/11 families for ordering the special ops mission that killed the world's #1 terrorist, Osama bin Laden. 1 month ago, you said about President Obama, quote, "He doesn't understand America's place in the world, America's place in history. He is weak." Does he still look weak to you today?
Well, first of all, Brett, let me thank Fox News and the Republican Party of South Carolina for hosting this debate. I think it's an important discussion about the future of America. And I want to thank the other contenders who are here with me on this stage for showing up tonight and being part of this important discussion. And to the city of Greenville, the gracious hospitality they've extended to all of us, we appreciate that as well. I do congratulate President Obama for the fine job that he did in taking some tough decisions and being decisive as it related to finding and killing Osama bin Laden. He did a good job, and I tip my cap to him in that moment. But that moment is not the sum total of America's foreign policy. He's made a number of other decisions relating to our security here and around the world that I don't agree with. And in fact, if it turns out that many of the techniques that he criticized during the campaign led to Osama bin Laden's being identified and killed, he should be asked to explain whether he does or doesn't support those techniques. But just to give you one example, in Libya, he made a decision to subordinate our decision-making to the United Nations. I don't agree with that at all. If he says Gaddafi must go, he needs to maintain the options to make Gaddafi go, and he didn't do that.
I know I just read the rules of the debate, but I want to get you all on the record quickly. If you could raise your hand if, as president, you would put out a photo of a dead Osama bin Laden. Just to be sure, Mr. Cain, you would not.
I would not.
Senator Santorum, you said Monday President Obama has made the country less safe, and his policies have made America's enemies, quote, less fearful and less respectful of us. But when it comes to going after terrorists, for example, drone attacks in Pakistan have more than tripled under President Obama. He sent 30,000 more U.S. troops into Afghanistan last year, and he just authorized, as we talked about this mission to kill bin Laden. How much more aggressive could he be?
If you look at what President Obama has done right in foreign policy, it has always been a continuation of the Bush policies. He's gone right by keeping Gitmo open. He's done right by finishing the job in Iraq. He has done right by trying to win in Afghanistan. Those were existing policies that were in place. The decision he made with Osama bin Laden was a tactical decision. It wasn't a strategic decision. The strategic decision was made already by President Bush to go after him. What President Obama has done on his watch, the issues that have come up while he's been president, he's gotten it wrong strategically every single time. Whether it's in Central America, Colombia, and Honduras, whether it's in the Middle East, with Egypt, with Syria, and most importantly, with Iran. We had an opportunity 18 months ago to topple a regime that is a sworn enemy, is at war with this country, is funding terrorist attacks against our troops and in the Middle East, and the President of the United States sided with the mullahs instead of the demonstrators.
Congressman Paul, you have wanted to pull U.S. troops out of Afghanistan for years. In fact, you said on the House floor about the U.S. military's efforts in Afghanistan, quote, "Whose interests do we serve by continuing this exercise in futility?" So if President Paul had been running things and troops were already out of Afghanistan, wouldn't that mean that Osama bin Laden would be alive today?
Absolutely not. I mean, he wasn't caught in Afghanistan. Nation building in Afghanistan and telling those people how to live and getting involved in running their country hardly had anything to do with finding the information where he was being held in a country that we give billions of dollars of foreign aid to. At the same time, we're bombing that country. So it's the policy that's at fault. No, not having the troops in Afghanistan wouldn't have hurt. But we went to Afghanistan to get him, and he hasn't been there. Now that he's killed, boy, it is a wonderful time for this country now to reassess it and get the troops out of Afghanistan and end that war that hasn't helped us and hasn't helped anybody in the Middle East.
Hold the applause. Mr. Cain, about Afghanistan, you recently said this, quote, if the experts, the generals, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, if they believe we can win, I'm not going to tear up the plan they give me. I'm going to execute the plan. If we can't win, I want to know what we can do to exit with dignity out of that country. You're running for president after almost 10 years in Afghanistan. You don't have your own plan yet about what you would do in Afghanistan?
No, because it's not clear what the mission is. That's the bigger problem. It's not clear what the mission is. It's not real clear to the American people what our interests are. And then thirdly, it's not clear what the roadmap to victory is. And what does that mean? This is why I would revisit the issue in defining those three critical questions, answering those questions before I, as president, made a decision. Because before I make a decision to send men and women in uniform into battle, I want to make sure we know what the objective is clearly, that we clearly know how it serves our interests either at home or abroad, and thirdly, what is our roadmap to victory?
But, sir, how would you define winning in Afghanistan right now as you're looking at it as a candidate?
My point is the experts and their advice and their input would be the basis for me making that decision. I'm not privy to a lot of confidential information since I'm not in government and I'm not in administration. One of the things that I've always prided myself on is making an informed decision based upon knowing all of the facts. And at this point, I don't know all of the facts, but that's the process that I would use. Make sure that we're working on the right problem. Make sure that we set the right priorities relative to Afghanistan and every other country. Thirdly, make sure we get the advice from the right people and then put those plans into place.
Okay. Well, that was quick. You stopped quick. You got the bell then.
Good breaks.
Governor Johnson, you have said you're an advocate of getting out of Afghanistan tomorrow. You've also said that you'd support a Democratic plan to establish a timetable with an end date for withdrawal of U.S. troops in Afghanistan. Are you worried at all about providing a specific end date, and that possibly would enable the Taliban to move in the day after the U.S. troops left?
Well, first of all, I'm not in favor of a timetable. I'm in belief that that timetable should be tomorrow, and I realize that tomorrow may involve several months. I was opposed to us going into Iraq from the beginning. I really thought that there was no threat to our national security. I really thought that if we went into Iraq, we would find ourselves in a civil war to which there would be no end. And I thought we had the military surveillance capability to see Iraq roll out any weapons of mass destruction. And if they would have done that, we could have gone in and dealt with that. Afghanistan, originally, I was completely supportive of that. We were attacked, we attacked back. That's what our military is for, and after 6 months, I think we'd pretty effectively taken care of al-Qaeda. But that was 10 years ago. We're building roads, schools, bridges, and highways in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we're borrowing 43 cents out of every dollar to do that. In my opinion, this is crazy. And then looking at Libya right now, I'm in a position right now where I'm issuing opinions on everything right away. My opinion on Libya is I'm opposed to it A through Z.
Thank you, Governor. Now to my colleague, Chris Wallace, with another round of questions. Chris.
Thank you, Brett. And gentlemen, let's continue this conversation and let's talk about how to reach out to the Arab world in this new post-Bin Laden era. Senator Santorum, I want to start with you. You say that Muslims are predisposed to fundamentalism. In March, you said this to students at Bates College. In the case of Islam, most people would say it's somewhat stuck in the 7th century because of the interpretation of the Quran. The problem is that people who have tried to modernize Islam get killed. Question, in this Arab Spring, when young people across the Middle East are protesting, not bombing, can the American president afford to be seen as anti-Islam?
Well, I'm not anti-Islam, first. What I'm doing is just recognizing the reality. And the reality is that the version of Islam that is practiced in the Middle East, that is growing and spreading, is one that is not going to be one that we can deal with very easily. It's one that requires, as a Catholic, it's a tough term to say, reformation. It requires some sort of introspection within the Islamic world. And I think we have an opportunity now that we have shown that we are going to be vigilant, that we're not going to back down, that thankfully we're not putting timetables, definite timetables to leave, that we're going to continue and finish this job. It's time for us to engage those in the Muslim world, and there are many in the Muslim world, who want to abandon these radical principles and want to fight those who are advocating those. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, they are not treated particularly well when they do. We need to be a government that talks about those problems. We cannot continue to put the ideological battle in the closet and not bring it out and talk about it and deal with it.
Thank you. Congressman Paul, you say that we should cut off all foreign aid to the Middle East and, quote, let them take care of themselves. You say the prison at Guantanamo should be closed, that the detainees there have not been given due process. Governor Pawlenty said a couple of months ago that bullies respect strength, not weakness. Is Governor Pawlenty wrong?
Well, I think strength is good, but you have to have strength in doing the right things. I think secret military prisons, keeping people there for years and years without due process, is not a characteristic of a republic that believes in freedom. It is just not the process. It's more typical of an authoritarian government to have secret prisons. So therefore, I don't think it serves our purpose. We have tried nearly 300 suspects in civilian courts, and hundreds of them have been convicted and put away. So why are we afraid of openness? Why do we have to move in the direction of giving up the right of habeas corpus, which someday, if we're not careful, will affect American citizens? We should treat people the way we think we might be treated under dire circumstances. And our dire circumstances are moving right along because we may have real trouble in this country and we may be subject to the same type of treatment. So we do not need secret prisons, nor do we need the torture that goes on in these secret military prisons.
I want to follow up on... I'd like to follow up on this with you, Governor Pawlenty, because you mentioned it in your first answer. We heard it, very different opinion from Congressman Paul. There is a renewed debate about enhanced interrogation in the aftermath of the taking out of Osama bin Laden. 2 years ago, you would not endorse waterboarding of high-value detainees. You said this, I think clearly we have to weigh the benefits of the information against the damage it causes not only to the individual, but to our values more broadly. Since then, Governor, have you decided where you stand on waterboarding?
Well, I believe my position hasn't changed, Chris, in this regard. I've been all over the Middle East. I've been to Iraq 5 times. I've been to Afghanistan 3 times. I've been to many other countries in the Middle East, including Turkey and Kuwait and Jordan and Israel and others. And as to your previous point, there is a group of individuals who are radical jihadists, and we need to call them by name. And they believe it's okay to kill innocent people in the name of their religion. It is not all of Islam. It is not all Muslims, but there is a subgroup who believe it's okay. In fact, it's their plan and design to kill innocent people. The first order of business of the United States federal government is to protect this country and the American people. And the people and the mindset that killed 3,000 of our fellow citizens on September 11, 2001 would have killed not 3,000, but 300,000 if they could have, or 3 million, or 30 million. We need to do everything we can within our value systems and legal structures to make sure that doesn't happen. I support enhanced interrogation techniques under limited circumstances.
Well, let me ask you all directly. This is going to be another raising of your hands, and you didn't answer this specifically, Congressman Paul. Raise your hand if you would support a resumption of waterboarding under any circumstances.
Under certain circumstances or any
yes,
circumstances?
under certain circumstances.
Certain or any?
Under any circumstances that you could imagine, not all.
Sure, I'll do it.
So just to be clear, the three of you under individual case-by-case basis would support waterboarding. Congressman Paul, you would not.
No, I would not.
And Governor Johnson, you would not.
Anything.
I would not.
Okay.
Well, that's just simply not true, Ron. I mean, the fact is that, what we found is that some of this information that we find out that led to Osama bin Laden actually came from these enhanced interrogation techniques. And by the way, we wouldn't have been able to launch a raid into Pakistan to get Osama bin Laden if we weren't in Afghanistan.
May I say what prompted me to raise my hand on this issue very briefly? I heard Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu say it very clearly a few months after 9/11/2001, after the tragedy. The terrorists have one objective: to kill all of us. And so, yes, I believe that we should do whatever means possible in order to protect the people of this nation. That's their ultimate goal.
Juan Williams has the next round of questions on the economy and gas prices. Juan.
Governor Johnson, the nation's unemployment rate is 8.8%. And this week, jobless claims rose to their highest level in 8 months. Among your proposals for getting the private sector to start hiring are eliminating corporate income tax, doing away with the federal minimum wage law, and to stop extending unemployment benefits. Isn't that just a windfall for big business?
Well, absolutely not. I think that repealing or doing away with the corporate income tax is simply getting us back to where we were. And we need to understand that the corporate income tax is a double tax, that we all own the corporations, and when income gets distributed to us, we pay the tax on that. So we have the highest corporate income tax in the world right now. Let's abolish it. Let's make it the way that it was to begin with. And that will literally create tens of millions of jobs overnight, because this country will be the only place to establish, grow, build, nurture business. Why won't that happen? And then with regard to unemployment benefits, I'm in the camp, Juan, that believes that we as individuals, we need a help. We need a bit of help. So government helps out. But at the point at which it runs out, that's when we really deal with the problems that we have. And as individuals, that's when we deal with those problems. So does government actually perhaps make the problem worse as opposed to better by having a finite amount of time that you would receive unemployment benefits?
Governor Pawlenty, despite 10 years of the Bush tax cuts, the unemployment rate here in South Carolina was 9.6% in March. Do you have any ideas for stimulating the job market beyond continued tax cuts?
Well, I sure do, Juan, and that's an important question. As I travel the country, people are very worried about their jobs. I grew up in a working-class family in a meatpacking town, not unlike Greenville here in South Carolina, that used to have textile mills, and at a very young age, when those meatpacking plants shut down, I saw the face of job loss and economic worry in my hometown and even in my own family. So I've seen this and I've lived it. And so we have a situation where the best thing that we can do for our fellow citizens is do those things that's going to make it more likely that jobs are going to grow. And in South Carolina, I'll give you a great example. You have this administration through the National Labor Relations Board telling a private company that they cannot relocate to South Carolina and provide jobs in this state, and they're good-paying jobs and they're needed jobs. It's a preposterous decision and position of this administration.
Later in the debate.
But I just want to make it clear. I mean, the idea that the federal government can tell a private business where they can be and not be in the United States of America is a whole new line that this administration has crossed, and it's outrageous.
As I said, we're going to come back to that issue. It's a hot one here in the state of South Carolina. Mr. Cain, the national average price for a gallon of gasoline is now close to $4, and it's approaching $5 in some states. This affects prices, obviously, way beyond the pump. The cost of transportation drives up the cost of doing business and leads to higher food prices. So, Mr. Cain, what will President Cain do to alleviate skyrocketing gas prices.
Contrary to what President Obama said when he stated there wasn't anything that he could do in the short term, that simply is not true. The one thing that the president can do is to establish a real energy independence plan. We have all of the resources we need right here in this country to establish energy independence if we had the leadership. Now, the dynamics that impact the price of oil and ultimately the price of gasoline, getting it out of the ground, refinery and distribution, and speculators. If the world market believed that we were serious about energy independence and we were going to utilize all of our existing resources, the speculators would stop speculating up and they speculate down until we get our own oil out of the ground.
We will have many more economic questions a little bit later. Let's go now to Shannon Bream for the next round of questions on health care. Shannon.
Thanks, Brad. Governor Pawlenty, we'll start with you. You, as every other participant here tonight, will notice that former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney is not here, but you've had plenty to say about Romney Care, including this, quote, "Looking at the Massachusetts experience, it would not be the one I would want for the country to follow any further." A poll just weeks ago showed that 84% of Massachusetts residents are satisfied with the plan. Why isn't that good enough for you?
Well, Governor Romney's not here to defend himself, and so I'm not going to pick on him or the position that he took in Massachusetts, but I will tell you this. The answer to our health care problem is not to drag it into Washington, D.C. and create a top-down, government-run, centralized, limited choice, limited option system. We took a different direction in my state of Minnesota. I governed there. The direction for health care reform is to empower individuals and families to make choices that are best for them. And if they need financial help, let's give it to them, but let's give it to them directly. And this is an issue. President Obama stood in Iowa in 2008 on the night of the Iowa caucuses, and he promised the nation that he would do health care reform focused on cost containment. He opposed an individual mandate, and he said he was going to do it with Republicans. He broke that promise. He went to Washington, D.C. and jammed down our throats one of the most partisan, most misguided pieces of legislation in the modern history of the country. It's going to make health care costs worse, not better.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Santorum, I turn to you. Governor Johnson has said that in addition to repealing the president's health care plan, he thinks Republicans need to think about repealing the prescription drug plan tied to Medicare. You voted for it. It's cost hundreds of billions of dollars. You've said you regretted that vote now. As president, would you work to repeal that and leave the 25 million plus seniors who now enjoy that benefit without it?
No, what I would do is work to reform the entire Medicare system, which is what's being proposed by Paul Ryan and what I've been proposing for a very long time. One of the reasons I actually voted for the Medicare prescription drug plan was because it was a private sector operated plan. It was not, as the current Medicare system is and what Obamacare is, a government-run, top-down type of approach. And in fact, the way we designed that program resulted in the program coming in 40% under budget. I don't know of any other program that's actually come in under budget in Washington, D.C. And the reason it is because the design was right. We need to take that design and apply it to the entire Medicare program, which is exactly what Paul Ryan has proposed. So the answer is not to pull prescription drugs out. Prescription drugs is an important part of healthcare delivery in America, and to have a Medicare plan without a prescription drug component really doesn't make any sense. We need to have a plan that is run efficiently, that is private sector, and is not an unlimited entitlement. What we have right now is an uncapped entitlement. We need to cap the entitlement and put people in charge instead of the government.
Thank you, Senator. Congressman Paul, you have said that medical malpractice awards are creating a crisis in the medical industry, driving doctors out of the business. We also know the CBO has projected that tort reform could save the federal government $54 billion over 10 years. So why are you against federal tort reform?
Because the federal government shouldn't be involved. It's a state matter. Tort law is a state matter. And it's a tough vote for me because as a physician, I know doctors are on the receiving end, and it does push up the cost of medicine. But if you look carefully at all my legislation, I have offered a free market alternative to this, to allow the doctors to negotiate, to make contracts, get them out from under the monopoly control laws, give tax deductions for insurance policy where there's no fault insurance. And there is a way in the private market. Today, we can't contract with our patients for a third-party contract, third-party settlement. And that takes it out of the market, turns it over to the attorneys. If they accept my position on this, a free market approach, and not a nationalized tort law control of this, believe me, we'd put all the trial lawyers out of business, and they wouldn't get most of the money that comes from all these lawsuits when they're suing doctors.
Thank you, Congressman.
Chairman, thank you. Coming up later, we'll ask these candidates about other potential candidates who are not here. And you can go to foxnews.com during the break and vote in our online poll. Tell us what you think about the folks who didn't show. But first, government spending and how to tackle the nation's debt.
We continue to face a very serious fiscal challenge in this country. There's $14 trillion of debt. We continue to borrow nearly 40 cents on every dollar we spend. The federal government is broke.
We'll continue the first Republican presidential debate live in Greenville, South Carolina, after the break.
CSX trains get more fuel efficient every day, and it seems the environment is taking notice. CSX, how tomorrow moves.
Geico, saving people money on more than just car insurance.
Imagine facing the day with less chronic low back pain. Imagine living your life with less chronic osteoarthritis pain. Imagine you with less pain. Cymbalta can help. Cymbalta is a non-narcotic treatment that's FDA approved to manage chronic musculoskeletal pain. One pill a day, every day, can help reduce this pain.
Tell your doctor right away if your mood worsens, you have unusual changes in mood or behavior, or thoughts of suicide. Antidepressants can increase these in children, teens, and young adults. Cymbalta is not approved for children under 18. People taking MAOIs or thyroidazine or with uncontrolled glaucoma should not take Cymbalta. Taking it with NSAID pain relievers, aspirin, or blood thinners may increase bleeding risk. Severe liver problems, some fatal, were reported. Signs include abdominal pain and yellowing of the skin or eyes. Talk with your doctor about your medicines, including those for migraine, or if you have high fever, confusion, and stiff muscles, to address a possible life-threatening condition. Tell your doctor about alcohol use, liver disease, and before you reduce or stop taking Cymbalta. Dizziness or fainting may occur upon standing. Side effects include nausea, dry mouth, and constipation.
Ask your doctor about Cymbalta. Imagine you with less pain. Cymbalta can help. Go to Cymbalta.com to learn about a free trial offer.
I plan for everything, but not a 612 credit score. It makes creditors think I'm unreliable. And it turns out our little bun in the oven is 2 buns. So we need a bigger place and a bigger loan. That's why I'm taking control at creditreport.com, getting the information I need to understand my score and how it works. At creditreport.com, I'm not a number. I'm Lisa. Or Mom.
Offer applies with enrollment in creditreport.com.
Welcome back to the first Republican presidential debate. We're here in the Peace Center in Greenville, South Carolina, where now my colleague Chris Wallace has the next round of questions for the candidate. The topic, spending and the national debt. Chris.
Thank you, Brett. Senator Santorum, you say that Republicans should refuse to raise the debt limit unless Democrats agree to take out all funding for Obamacare. Is ending or at least blocking or defunding Obama health care reform more important than letting the country